It is Wednesday, October 27th, and there's a few brand new Nintendo Switch online related stories that I want to share with you all today, starting with a new look and some hands-on footage at the N64 controller and an interesting discussion around what Switch games outside of the NSO library that it is compatible with. Then I also want to share with you guys a very interesting video that went live today that does do a good job comparing the Wii U N64 ROMs to these new NSO N64 ROMs, and there's some very noticeable differences that I want to talk about. And then the big talking point for today's video is Nintendo Switch Online and a follow-up to the data mine story that we talked about yesterday. And I want to talk through when we might expect Nintendo to add additional games to the service and which games we can expect. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, we're covering a few different stories today, and they are all Nintendo Switch Online related, and I know that may get some people already worked up in the comments section because, surprise, surprise, this is a very controversial rollout from Nintendo, and it is primarily due to the price point and then even the new information we got around input delay and some of these ROMs not running as smoothly as you would expect them to for a paid service at this price point. But to start off our discussion today, I do want to talk through the N64 controller specifically, as I am still waiting for mine to arrive and I cannot wait for it to get here. It's supposed to come this week, but Nintendo's not the best at quick shipping time. I think they shipped it out on the release date as opposed to like trying to get it to you on the release date. At least that was my case where I'm at. But so I'm still waiting to get my hands on this controller personally, but I was curious about the overall functionality of this controller as a whole, especially when it comes to games that maybe aren't part of the NSO expansion pack. And to my surprise today, Nintendo Life uploaded a video that actually outlines this, and I will have it linked in the description down below in case you guys want to go watch the entire thing. But the interesting part about this controller and how it is mapped, there's a couple notable takeaways. You cannot easily just use this controller with any Switch game. Like, he definitely did a good job explaining some of the hiccups, as you can actually kind of somewhat functionally play games like Breath of the Wild with it, but you can't use your sword. And a big takeaway that I noticed from the video is that the N64 controller can actually not be remapped in the system settings. So while we do have that ability on like the Pro controller and the Joy-Cons, that ability is missing from this one. So if you are somebody who's still trying to find an N64 controller with the hopes to play it on a lot of your other Switch titles, there will absolutely be some wonkiness and some, not good user experience at the end of the day if you decide to try to use this on other Switch classic games. So while it can be done, I do want to put that message out there in case of people were, going to buy this controller with really the intention to use it as one of their main wireless Switch controllers. And I don't know why you would want to do that, because, even for me, somebody that has incredible nostalgia for this controller, and I am buying it primarily so I can replay these classic Zelda N64 games with their original controller, but wirelessly. Again, if you are not intending to do that and you want to use it across the board on other games, there will definitely be better options out there, because this one is not, since it's not remappable, you're gonna run into issues. And obviously it only has one analog stick, which is a big hiccup in and of itself. But one thing I do also want to point out to all those that were talking about how the C buttons are mapped, with the Pro controller right now, and one thing that I did not actually catch, but there was a couple people that commented in yesterday's video when I was talking about it, is that the C buttons are actually mapped to the right analog stick on the Pro controller, and that's visible in this Nintendo Life video as well, because when he uses the C buttons on standard Switch games, they act like the right analog. So that is a big deal, because I actually stated that part of the frustration on the controller mapping for this new layout is the fact that you have to hold that ZR button to essentially have access to the other C buttons that aren't mapped to part of the controller. And it turns out that the analog stick on the right side of, your Joy-Con, or whether it be your Pro controller, can function as all of those C directional buttons. So that is a very good takeaway. If you guys were not aware, Nintendo doesn't do a good job explaining that on their graph. I think there is a line that actually links the right C stick to those buttons, but it's not apparent, like they don't call it out. So I know a lot of people did miss that info, because a bunch of people online were talking about not having that ability, and I myself at the time of recording yesterday's video did not know that that was out there. So those are a couple takeaways that I had from this video, and that, thanks to the people that commented that down below, because that is big information when it comes to how we will enjoy these games, whether it be with a Pro controller or if you were going to get the NSO N64 themed controller. And that's what I would love to hear from you guys now at the comments down below, is is obviously this thing has sold out again immediately on the second restock wave, and scalping is an issue with it. And I want to know from you all if you are still planning to pick up an N64 NSO controller, or if you're just going to simply pass it by and maybe get it down the line when it becomes more readily available. So please share your thoughts and feelings on all things around the N64 controller in the comments down below. Now, the next thing I want to share with you all today is actually a really big update and an overview trailer that GameXplain did do, and I will have this link down in the description below as well if you guys want to watch the entire thing. But they have a side-by-side comparison video that went live today from the Virtual Console Wii U N64 ROMs, comparing them to the new ROMs that, of course, are causing a lot of controversy online when it comes to the NSO editions. And the one thing that I do want to stress here, because I know we've been primarily upset with Nintendo's decision and their direction around this service so far, there is a big win that we actually got with those ROMs that you may have forgotten about on the Wii U, as I downloaded a lot of those games on the Wii U and I totally forgot about this dark filter being on essentially every N64 ROM that you download from the eShop on the Wii U store. So this is a big deal for me, because if you look at the side-by-side comparison, there is a day and night difference in how bright and vibrant the picture looks. And while we'll talk about, you know, the issues that the NSO ROMs have here in a second, this is a big win and a positive one in my book, because if they would have left these dark shaders on there, it just really kills the overall color and vibe of the game. When they went to like this extremely colorful game like Yoshi's Story, it is like day and night apparent that you can absolutely enjoy this in a much brighter environment and see the colors pop on these NSO versions of the ROMs versus what we had on the Wii U Virtual Console. And I think that that was implemented as some kind of accessibility feature to tone down the flashes from happening as bright on screen, which obviously may be an issue for certain people out there, so you need to be aware of that if that is affected by you. But I believe it was also mentioned in MVG's video today that I will also have linked in the description down below, where he actually overviews how Nintendo emulated these versions of the N64 ROMs. And while there are a lot of mistakes that were made and a lot of, you know, lazy development behind it, he points out what is good and what is bad. And I believe one of the adjustments that they made is when there's like, you know, enemies dying and there's a few bright flashes that used to happen, they've toned that back to one bright flash. So I guess Nintendo now feels like they don't have to have this dark shader overlaying the entire image and essentially downgrading the quality. Now, one other big issue that does come up is how they've handled obviously the fog and draw distances, things that we briefly touched on yesterday. But if you guys want an in-depth look at that, I would definitely recommend MVG's video, and then also recommend at least looking at this comparison, because even though there are clearly some texture issues, that water temple Dark Link fight room from Ocarina of Time, that's definitely a sore thumb stick out issue for me, because it is just clearly, it looks significantly better on all of the other versions of the game. And that is a real issue. I'm like, why did they scale back that ability to do reflections and fog and draw distances? Like, it is a interesting talking point. Like, they just straight up toned down the textures on that particular point. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of issues and, you know, problems that are out there today with these NSO ROMs, but I am hopeful. I know Nintendo doesn't have a good track record of listening to their fans and going back and updating things, but I am hopeful that, you know, since this emulator is what they used off the Mario 3D All-Stars collection game for Mario 64, that maybe they are still rolling out updates to this emulator as time goes on, and they could effectively fix some of these issues that we see today. Obviously, that's just some hope out there, but it's not confirmed from Nintendo themselves. And, you know, to be honest with you, at the end of the day, I will take, as much as it is not a popular opinion from a lot of fans, I would rather have these games played brightly and with the colors that they have on the NSO version, that and even, you know, deal with some of the fog issues and the draw distance and texture issues. I would rather have that than have that dark screen over the entire gameplay for each N64 ROM. So it's at least one glimmer of light, one little, you know, thing that is a positive note in my eyes on these N64 ROMs. But that's where I want to hear from you guys, is how would you personally have it? Because I know Virtual Console on the Wii U was a great thing, and even on the Wii it was fantastic, and a lot of fans have very fond memories of playing through those ROMs. So I want to know from you guys if you would have preferred the version of those ROMs with the dark overlay screen, or if you are like me and you actually, you know, even with the issues about the fog and the shadows, you would still prefer them to be brighter and more vibrant on the display. So share your thoughts and opinions on the differences in these ROMs in the comments down below. Now, the last major story I want to share with you all today is a update around the data mine that we talked about that of course hit the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack as of yesterday, and this data mine did reveal to us that Nintendo is indeed planning to support Sega Genesis with at least 52 games over the lifetime of the service, and N64 with at least 38 games over the lifetime of the service. And it got a lot of people talking about what games we might see, and this list is indeed in alphabetical order. And of course, it also revealed that there could be an additional console, as there is a number that is skipped in the references of all the existing consoles on there. And to kick off this discussion today, I want to quickly hop over to VGC, where they've done a good job outlining what information is out there and a few games that we didn't talk about yesterday that we may be able to expect to come to NSO at some point in the future. So to kick off the article here, Smash Bros, Wave Race, and more look set for Switch's N64 library. Datamine suggests that more than 20 further unannounced N64 games are planned. More than 20 additional unannounced N64 games are planned for Switch's online newly launched expansion pack tier, a datamine of the service has suggested. That's according to analysis by Twitter user Mondo Mega, who has worked out using the game's database IDs that at least 38 games are planned in total for the service. That represents 17 more N64 titles than were released for both the Wii and Wii U's Virtual Console service. Switch Online's N64 library launched this week with 8 games. They meant 9 there, that's a typo, including Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Star Fox 64, Yoshi's Story, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Mario Tennis, Dr. Mario 64, Sin and Punishment, and Winback. A further 7 titles have been confirmed to be coming soon, including Banjo-Kazooie, Paper Mario, Pokemon Snap, Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards, Mario Golf, and F-Zero X. This week's datamine reveals that each Switch N64 game's database ID is organized in alphabetical order, allowing users to deduce that Super Smash Bros, Wave Race, and Mario Party 1 through 3 are also likely planned to be added. The gap between Winback Covert Operations and Yoshi's Story also suggests that one of the WWF No Mercy, Wipeout 64, or Worms Armageddon could potentially come to the service. N64 games released for the Wii and Wii U that are yet to be confirmed for the Switch include 1080 Snowboarding, Cruisin' USA, Donkey Kong 64, Excitebike 64, Pokemon Puzzle League, Mario Golf, Org Battle 64, and Bomberman Hero. With the announcement that Microsoft has approved Banjo-Kazooie for release on the Switch service, it's also possible that further rare titles such as Banjo-Tooie, Jet Force Gemini, and Perfect Dark could also follow. In addition, this week's datamine suggests that at least 52 Genesis/Mega Drive games are planned for Switch Online, and there's also further hints in the ordering of the platforms that Game Boy could be added in the future. So obviously Nintendo at this point needs to do a ton to the service to truly make it worth it in the eyes of the consumers, as they more than doubled their asking price for their base online Nintendo Switch service, and it didn't add as much as people were expecting. And you know, where I want to start off this conversation is kind of what they could do to at least reassure us that there is more value coming, and that is to stick to a relatively quick update schedule. As you know, 38 games is not a bad list, especially whenever you think of some of the classics that could come over, especially as part of the rare titles. Like, give us GoldenEye, and with online multiplayer, I think that would fix the problem for a lot of people right there alone. I know there's licensing issues around that, but Nintendo should just pay the money and figure it out at this point, because I think that that is a fan classic that people want to replay again. And then you just have a ton of other titles, obviously Perfect Dark, Banjo-Tooie, Jet Force Gemini, Conker's Bad Fur Day. Like, obviously those are all rare games that Nintendo will have to write a check to get over, and that may make it more worth it in certain consumers' eyes. And I think that they have to come out and actually commit to an update schedule, because if we look in history, they said that of course with the NES and SNES titles that they would continue to update the service, and they did, but they did it much more frequently at the launch of those services. And that's kind of where my theory falls for when we might see additional N64 games added. Like, I think Nintendo's going to, at least at the front of this service, update these things relatively quickly. Like, hopefully a monthly update schedule with 2 to 3 N64 games, and maybe 3 to 5 Sega Genesis games, considering that we're getting over 52 total. And they may miss, you know, here or there, like deliver only 2 Genesis games one month and 1 N64 game one month. But if we can at least take to the bank that a monthly update schedule is happening, and that it will happen frequently, and not like this once per quarter thing that we saw them ultimately devolve down to with the end of the SNES and NES games, and just games that like nobody even knew of or cared about at all. Like, as long as they don't just give us a bunch of shovelware trash trash that was on the N64 library, and they actually go out of their way to build up this entire 38 game list as some fan classics, I think that we could see them turn the tide on people's mindsets around what this price point is worth. Now, you obviously have to have the conversation that they need to do some base online functionality overhauls as well. I personally would love to see that happen, but knowing Nintendo, I would expect, you know, features like voice chat, themes, folders, and all of that stuff to potentially be waiting until the Switch 2 or this whatever the successor to the Switch is at this point, just because it's been so long into the console's life cycle. But then of course we did just randomly get a Bluetooth audio update like out of the blue 4+ years after the Switch is released just here recently. So Nintendo likes to throw curveballs. They like to be super unpredictable, but they absolutely need to add more value to the service to get the mass majority of users to sign up. And that's where I want to pose the question to you guys today is, what does Nintendo need to do to make this service worth it to you in your eyes? Do you think you have to have extra consoles in there? Like, obviously we're skipping over a number with the way that the consoles progress, with NES, SNES, and N64 all being in the numerical order of 1, 2, and 3. Then we skip the number 4 and go to Genesis as 5. So that definitely implies that they are working on potentially another console being added to this. And if I were a betting man, I would say it was those heavily rumored Game Boy and Game Boy Color library of games, which in theory should run on the exact same emulator. So it could just be one additional app for both of those library of games. And, you know, hopefully one day we get Game Boy Advance added in there as well. And, you know, whenever we start to get all of that and each console does have its own built out library, does that change your mind at this point on the price point that Nintendo is asking? Or are you going to be someone who does hold out until Nintendo gives us those online functionality upgrades like voice chat, like themes and folders, and basic organizational changes to the systems? I've seen a lot of people comment like an achievement system they really want to see come to Nintendo platforms, and then the big thing like online servers. So I want to hear from you guys. What's it going to take for you to make it worth it in your eyes? And then what's the big titles that you want to see come over, you know, such as the rumored ones we talked about? I really hope we get WWF No Mercy. I have some fantastic memories for that, and specifically WrestleMania 2000 as well. But, you know, I don't think we're getting it all, but I do think we will see a lot of quality titles added over the course of time. So you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below about all the different stories we covered today, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.